Uncensored Radio, Real Talk Roundtable. Real life, real laughs, real talk.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We haven't had that intro for a hot minute. I'm like,
I know, right?
I forgot how short it was. I was like, oh, okay, it's Bunzel's voice. I'm like, so many good things happening at once. We are back around the round table. Like, excuse my voice. It's going to be a very interesting kind of day, but it will hold out there. Now, we haven't done a round table in a while, and we haven't done a live round table in a hot minute. So if you are out there and you're watching, please feel free to chuck in your 2 cents, because I've got two very verbose and interesting people here with me today that are not shy of a word, which is great, and I love it. So, hi Tim, how are you? Welcome back.
Yeah, good. Again, just just busy. Just a busy time of year. Everything's happening. Everybody's got plans. Everybody's outside. So it's just go. So trying to find a spare minute.
Busy man. And the lovely Vera is with us as well. She's here. Queen of opinions, we'll call her.
I can live with that.
I'd say we've all been called worse, right? We've all been called a lot.
Especially when you've got a lot of opinions.
Yes, right. Well, keep your opinions strong and handy, because today we are going to talk about something that's close to all of us. We were just discussing it before we came on stage. Before we came on stage, because this is what happens when you get older. We're talking about aging and identity today in a show we're calling Older and Bolder. And I know I'm opening a can of worms. And this came from, as always with the round table, this came from a couple of sources that inspired me. One was a very public incident, which we can watch back. So everyone just have a little look and listen at this clip.
And with my dreams, let it wash away my sanity. Cause I wanna feel the thunder, I wanna scream. Let the rain, bitch, you don't know that shit! Wow. Alright.
So for those of you that haven't seen that clip, young, hot, and zeitgeisty performer Doja Cat found out the hard way that we all get older, we all become a little bit unrelatable to the younger audience when she tried to get them to sing along to a Hilary Duff song that obviously she had grown up with and was met with a resounding silence. And that made me think, wow, there are generations today that just have no idea about things that were like, big, culturally important things. And then, again, it seems to come in threes. I was watching an episode of The Real Housewives of Orange County. Don't judge me. And they were talking about one of the grandfathers of the fathers of one of the ladies on the show was talking about how he used to hang out with Dean Martin, and the grandkids just like, the mother's like, they don't know who Dean Martin is, Dad. He's like, oh, radio. But for a third thing, literally across my desk came the 10 most common characteristics of millennials. So I thought, all right, the universe is guiding me to talk about growing up, getting old, and the lessons we have learned from them. So I have experience with this. I run into this issue probably nearly every day because of the job that I do. I teach performing arts, so I teach singing and dancing, and I'm constantly, I guess, exposed to the cultural changes and the popular changes, and just seeing the things that come and go in waves. And I think that I can stay in touch with what's happening with, the youth culture. I sound so old saying youth culture, and to start with. But the way things change and the way things change back is so interesting. Even on TikTok, there are so many millennial accounts now going, because we're all approaching middle age, or we're at middle age now. We were, as someone likes, as well, you're born in the 1900s. It's like, why does that sound so old? It's like you're born last millennium. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you so much for reminding me that I am like the dinosaurs and slowly dying out. But it's really
I am the dinosaur.
you're the queen. You've seen it all, so you can hopefully.
I am the La Brea tar pit.
Hopefully, you can guide Tim and myself through the generational dysfunction. But I just want to know: do you guys run up against this kind of thing much? I know, Tim, you're step parenting children, so. Is it something that you're like, wait, what? What's happening today?
Yeah, just to touch on kind of like how you started off too, like with like kind of those three things that hit you. I experienced two of those today myself, which was kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's definitely. See, I was raised by boomers, right? My parents were boomers. And then my aunts and uncles were a little bit closer in age to me, so they were like late Gen X. And technically, I'm millennial, right? I'm 82. I think the cutoff line is 80, or what they call a Zennial, because there's that short bridge, that smaller generation that kind of bridge both gaps.
Yeah, we're clinging in there, Tim. We're clinging in there to the millennial status.
No, trust me. I see all these Gen Z posts on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, and I'm like, well, I'm Gen Z because I identify with a lot more with what you guys talk about versus what the millennials talk about. Growing up drinking from a hose, being a latchkey kid, keg parties in the woods and underneath like high power tension lines and and things like that. No seatbelts in the cars growing up, but it's funny. I think my older generation, my aunts, uncles, parents, did a really good job of making sure I knew about their culture so I could appreciate it and knew where my culture was coming from. So I'm trying to do that with my stepdaughters. So, I mean, look, my playlist right now, my like songs on my Spotify, when it comes on in the car, it touches everything from, All or Nothing by O-Town to the Eagles, to Elton John, to Bob Seger, and Daisy, our 11-year-old, she sings along to a lot of Eagles and a lot of Chicago now, and she'll like sing along, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that's Chicago," or that's Peter Cetera. He's the singer of Chicago, but that's him by himself. Like, so she's catching on all that. I'm like, as long as you can carry that, I've done right by you. And I think music is just easier because music essentially is timeless, right? Like. Right. Every once in a while, you'll hear an old song, and you're like, wow, that kind of hits different. There's a different vibe to that. And even if it's an older song you've never heard before, you can kind of get behind it because of lyrics. They may hit, or strike a certain nerve. So I think music is a big bridge.
It can be passively absorbed too. Like if you're playing that in the background, they don't realize they're soaking it in until they're singing along one day.
And today I saw, it was a clip from another podcast, and the woman said that there was a show, and I don't know if it was like a stand-up comic or just some sort of like general speaker, but she's like, I'm going to say 2 words from a song. You're going to finish the lyric, and that'll tell me what generation you are. So all she said was, hey now, and it was like half the people said, you're a rock star. Right, and that's like, oh, so you're a millennial. But then it was like, then one guy in the radio, in the booth of the podcast was like, well, what about hey now, don't dream. And it's like, those are the boomers. Like, you forget that song existed until you and it's like, then there's one that I don't even know the lyrics to. That's supposed to be the Hillary
Duff song. Hey now, this is what dreams are made of.
yeah, right. So it's kind of funny that is right now the center of a lot of
it's a conversation that's happening.
Conversations, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Well, Vera, you are, as you said, you are the elder statesperson of the group.
I was always told that I was a boomer. The boomer generation didn't end until 1965, when I was a kid and into college. And I kept saying, wait a minute, boomers have all this prosperity. boomers had all this opportunity. I got none of that. I got 12% interest on my student loans, you know, and then it got sold for 20%. I drank out of the hose, you know.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, I remember taping songs off the radio, you know,
Yeah,
on a little
yeah.
cassette tape, you know. I don't feel like I'm a boomer. I know how to run a computer. I know how to use a cell phone. So I've always resented being called a boomer, but now they've changed the designation, and I guess from 1955 to 1965 is considered Gen Jones, right before Gen X. But I don't know. You're as old as
Yeah.
you feel. Some days I feel 100. Some days I feel 12.
But even that, even the redefinition, as we were talking about, you know, Zennials or Gen whatever, is an interesting concept in itself, because we were so willing to just put each other into generation classifications. But now we are, you know, going, well, that's not true, because I know this, but I also do this. There's this cross pollination of things, which we'll talk about later, because it's one of the things in the study that I found as well. But I think, look, we always look backwards to look forwards, and I can relate to Tim. There's very similar characteristics that, you know, I grew up in a Gen X world.
Right.
I just happened to be born at the cusp, as it were. Paranormal, Celtic Dragon Paranormal Investigations. Hello. Last boomer is 1964, and I'm on 60 this year. Congratulations.
You're now Jen Jones.
Oh, there you go. Celtic Dragon, you are now Jen Jones.
You are
Welcome to
now
the
Jen
Vera
Jones.
Club.
Welcome to my world, kiddo.
It's a pretty groovy club to be in. So I found a bit of a study, if you will, to back us up and understand a little bit about the key characteristics of millennials and how they serve in the modern day world. And it's interesting because it really does show where we are and how we as an age group have established ourselves and what that's meant in the next generation, because we're at a really interesting point where all these elder millennials now have children that are growing to adulthood, and we're seeing the results of our experience filter through. It's like the end of an experiment. You're like, oh dear. What do I write down? So we'll start off. Millennials, also known as Generation Y, display key characteristics in their approach to work, including high value on meaningful motivation, openness to challenging hierarchical structures, and a strong relationship with their superiors. Now, I think that's true, especially in my working history. I've always, you know, been very committed to jobs that I have and motivated by not necessarily just money, by, you know, by challenges and stuff like that, and also not afraid to question bosses and you know, see them as equal. But look at the modern day. I look at the kids that we hire today at one of my other jobs in retail, for example, and they just have no problem just not showing up to work and going, oh yeah, I can't make it. It's not happening.
Yeah,
I'm not here
this
today.
isn't working for me.
Yeah, like you're making me feel stressed. I feel like you're doing this to me. I'm like,
I'm very triggered.
But this is the thing. Have we created monsters?
You know, I go back and forth on this one, you know, because at my ripe old age of 62, I feel like, is it really creating a monster, or is it just creating something different? You know, it seems like every one of these micro generations, be they Gen Jones, Baby Boomer, Gen X, Zennials, whatever, feels like the younger generation's fucking up somehow. You know, is it just the change we're resisting? Is it possibly that we don't want to feel irrelevant, so we have to criticize that younger generation coming up. I mean, their work ethic is definitely different than mine. I was brought up that your boss said shit, you shit, you know.
Right.
But it's more healthy to be able to say, this is not working for me. Though I do think there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. But it's okay to say and leave a job. It's okay to change jobs 6 times if you have to in a year. You know, why should that be wrong? If the job doesn't fit, if the job isn't working for you, you should be able to leave a job.
I do think it's interesting how, piggybacking on some of the stuff that we've been talking about on the live show recently, how, especially last week, the pandemic really changed the definition of work for some people because, you know, a lot of us were working from home. And, you know, it kind of exposed this big secret where, you know, a lot of jobs you can do from home. And when it came time for people to come back to work, when it came time for people to come back to work, they're like, "Oh, I'm not coming back to work."
Well, there's so many employers that are demanding it.
Yeah, they're like, "I'll find another job. I'm just not coming back to work."
Yeah, no, you have to come into the office 3 days a week.
Yeah,
you can't work from home exclusively anymore.
Yeah, but there's a lot. Yeah,
in clinics, well, you know, an inpatient clinic, you should have to be there.
Yeah, I would hope. Yeah.
But you know, during the pandemic, a lot of the therapists were doing everything over Zoom, telehealth.
Yeah.
And the clinics, the state of New York has said, "Hi, dogs." The state of New York has said unequivocally, you have to be present in the office so many days a week. Telehealth is not going to be funded in this state anymore.
But just, I think that's interesting in itself that, you know, what, probably not even 5 years ago, I don't think I would have said no. Like, you know what I mean? If you have to do this, people go, "Oh no, I'll just find another job, it's fine." Because that seems to be the attitude around. We were looking for employees at my job forever, and people I'm
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No, I was going to say this. Now, does that raise a different question? Like, does that mean, like you were saying, like, have we created monsters, or you know, or is it just a change? So is that now just a generational change in work ethic? And what do you expect now moving forward?
Even just a generation change in work style. You know what I mean?
But yeah, no, right. But I mean, but you think about even something simple like customer service now. You know what I mean? Where like you would call up somewhere and, "Hey, I've got a problem with this, blah, blah. No problem, we'll take care of that for you, blah, 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 blah." Now it's, "Hey, this happened. I'm using your service and it wasn't provided for, and I issued money for that service. So how am I A, being compensated, or B, how's it being fixed?" And it's, "Well, it's not my problem, click." You know what I mean? Like that's like basically like the short response of what you're getting.
I don't know who's getting that person.
If you get a person, not a machine.
On Father's Day, Melissa's like, "Oh, like we weren't going to go out because the girls were with their dad. They were coming home, so we didn't have enough time to go out." So Melissa's like, "Look, I'll order something in. You know, what do you want?" So I was like, "Let's do like Applebee's or something. It was relatively cheap and whatever." So for whatever reason, DoorDash wasn't working with Applebee's that day, so that was no good. So I was like, "All right, we'll do cheesecake. That's around the corner." So we did cheesecake. Great. Goes through, says cheesecake is processing your order. The Dasher's on his way to pick it up. Dasher is waiting for your order. Dasher calls Melissa and says, "Cheesecake says they don't have your order." Melissa then gets on the phone with Cheesecake. "Hi, so-and-so DoorDash didn't get my order." "Oh, okay, we don't deal with DoorDash. Hold on, let me transfer you to the bakery." "No, I don't deal with DoorDash. That's this one." "No, we don't deal with that's hold it. Now we're back at the front desk." "Oh, okay, hold on 1 second." Then we finally get someone on the phone and they're like, "Yeah, we don't have your order here." I'm like, "I know you don't have our order there. We're aware you don't have our, we want to know why you don't have our order there and what are you doing to fix that?" You know, because there's been times like you don't know what child has an allergy, has medical needs. And I know that seems very like trivial because it's like, how often do you come across that? But why does it, like it shouldn't happen? You know what I mean? If I'm running a place, it doesn't happen. And if it does happen, I managed a pizzeria for something like 10 years. if someone called up and said that their pizza was cold or that they didn't like something, it was new pizza. Oh, is that pizza going out for delivery? Well, now it's going to that person's house. The next pizza will go. And then we just shuffle down the line. You know what I mean? And that's how we handle shit. You know, the customer was always right. And now it's not. Now it's, well, I don't like the way you're talking to me, or, you know, I don't deserve to be spoken to like that. And it's like, you know, and that's not all of the work ethic that I'm speaking of, but, you know, it goes into, I was, like Veer said, if I was told to do something by a job, yes. And if I complained about it, my parents, I heard it from my parents, never mind my boss. If I went home and complained about work, my parents were like, you know.
Or school.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like, what do you mean you could, like, you're lucky you got hit by the nun and not me. You know what I mean? Because then, you know, when they were in school, they talk about getting beat twice. You know, the nun hit them with a ruler, then they get home and get beat by their parents. You know, so it's like, I figured I had it good at that point. I'm just getting yelled at. It's the worst detention. You know, and now it's like, you can't tell me what to do, you know, and throwing phones and punching teachers and things like. And again, I'm sure that they said the same thing about us and things that we got away with the previous generation. So it's just our job to complain about the next generation and that generation, the next, and blah, blah, down the line.
I kind of think it is. I kind of think it's the change we resist, not the.
This is what to just finish off on this little section. The end of the working section of this paper says it's the main goal of a millennial / you know, elder millennial to focus on productive work environments with other millennials, provide regular feedback and recognition, respect their work-life balance, encourage collaboration, and take advantage of their aptitude for technology and creativity. So we can acknowledge that we are, you know, definitely not our parents, because the technology thing in itself is, I think, a whole show. Right. And the willingness to participate in technology, and there's just something about when you know a person that you know of a certain age goes, I can't get this to work. It makes you go, oh no, we're doing this, are we? We're doing it. We're really doing it. But
when I did that comic stand up last month, one of the comedians said, "Yeah, is anybody here the youngest person at work?" She said, "Doesn't matter how old you are. If you're the youngest person, you're automatically IT."
You're IT, exactly. You're IT, and I live for the day when I'm not IT. Like, that'll be great. When I am not the IT person, it'll be so fantastic. But the fact that I don't know, and it does, for me, again, this really did help. Feedback recognition was a big way of, you know, interacting with your superior, with, you know, people around to discuss your development and go, am I doing a good job? You know, validating yourself. In this day and age, a lot of people can't take that kind of feedback, especially if it's constructive criticism. If you say, oh yeah, you're doing this, but we really need to work on this, that's a big trigger point. It's like, you can't point out weakness or a learning deficit, because you're victimizing somebody. Where do you think that attitude comes from? Because that's not something I ever grew up with. Like, if I was doing something wrong, or if I am doing something wrong, I would rather know about it so I can, you know, fix it or work on it, or, you know, go, okay, well, maybe this job isn't for me if you expect that and I'm this. Where do you think that comes from? Because it's not, is it maybe a bit of foreshadowing about our generation not feeling good enough from parents and stuff? Is it generational crossover? Do you think that we've handed down to our children to go, it's okay for you to tell people that you're feeling a certain way and they're making you feel a certain way, and Where do you think it comes from?
I think I think you're correct with that, and I think that, right, I think like we're in a society right now where everything is very black and white, right? There's very few middle ground in anything you talk about. But in reality, there's tremendous amount of middle ground, right? Like we talk about the guy, like Vera, we all just talked about how, well, technically I'm a millennial, but I feel like I'm Gen X, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's okay. It does trickle over. Those lines are not written in stone where they're like, oh, you're born in January 1st, 1980. You no longer have any Gen X in you. And it's like,
right. Yeah.
it's like, well, there is a gray area and it's a couple of years wide. So like, it's okay. You can straddle both lines. So, but I do feel like a large portion of our generation, especially the elder millennials, we had tough either older boomer parents or I guess younger boomer parents. Like my dad was 57, my mom was 59. So they were like right at the end of the boomers. So it was like, and they were only 20 years old when I was born, 23. So like we almost were born within the same generation, you know what I mean? Because they're almost Gen X and I'm barely, millennial. So like, I feel like they were hard on us. You know what I mean? I feel like a Gen X raised by a Gen X is what I'm trying to say, right? So that's like the tough group, like the group you don't talk about, don't ignite the Gen Xers, so it's like the, my parents were tough and it was like, they demanded a lot of me, but I wore that like as a badge of honor where I was like, okay, like I need to I need to get dirty to do what I need to get done. And I have to put my nose to the grindstone, and that's what they expect of me. And if that's what's expected, then that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to excel. So I need to know where I'm doing things wrong so I can correct that. And then I think there's another half of that. We're like, why are you so hard on me? Why are you? And I feel like that's probably comes from a lot of households where parents were divided. Where like it was a tough dad and an easygoing mom, and she maybe felt bad for the child, so she raised it a little bit softer, for lack of a better term.
You don't really take into account, no one's raised in a bubble, right? No one's just raised by two parents. You have siblings, you have grandparents, you have aunts and uncles, you have school teachers and everything that affect you at that really important time in your life, and you take bits and pieces from these people and go, I really like this, I'm going to move forward with this, but this person made me feel like a complete sack of shit, and I'll never forget that, and I'll never forget why they made me feel like that. And that becomes part of that DNA as well.
Right. And like if I think about my family, all my first cousins and brother, my sisters, I look, and none of them are the type of people to play that quote unquote victim card where they feel victimized by constructive criticism. But like you said, that was the household that we were raised in. We were all very harsh on each other at family functions, like extremely competitive. And it was like, well, it was almost like they pit grandchildren against each other. It's like, okay, well, who had the better sports season this year? And it's like, oh, well, he finished in first, but he had more goals. And, so it was like, there was always that level of competition amongst our family. Cousins could not be a closer group of people, because once the adults left, we were like, what is their fucking problem? Like, we do not feel that way about each other. We applauded each other's accomplishments. But again, we were raised that competitive nature. So we all have that work ethic where we're okay with constructive criticism. And I think I think there is a big half that was raised by elder millennials or younger Gen Xers that are kind of told, like, you don't have to be a victim. You can stand up for yourself. And rightfully so. I mean, everybody should really have that mentality. But I think that there's a line you have to understand that constructive criticism is constructive. It's meant to build you up. It's meant to be constructive. I want you to be a better employee and a better worker all around, whether that's with our company or you move forward into another company. And, there's many things that I took from previous jobs into future jobs. I mean, that's why you put shit on a resume, right? I mean, that's why they're like, well, what did you do at this job? And if you look at your resume, it's fry cook. Then your next job was shift manager. Then your next job was night manager. Then your next job was store manager. You know what I mean? And it's like, it shows your growth over a period of time. And it's like, okay, now I know this person I'm hiring can take constructive criticism, use it constructively to build a better resume for themselves and move forward as a better person. So it's hard for me to sympathize or understand with someone who has trouble with that or doesn't accept that. It's just, I don't know.
Well, my resume is a hodgepodge because I didn't just change jobs. I changed fields.
Me too. Letter carrier, cook, postal worker, that. I'm all over the place.
I'm all over the place. I went from graphic design to human services into nursing. I just jumped ship. But, it's funny that you talk about accountability in the workplace because we don't get annual reviews anymore. And I think it has more to do with the fact that nurses are understaffed. They don't want to risk pissing somebody off. You know, they try to do one-on-one counseling in the moment, but they aren't doing annual reviews and they're not performance-based raises. In my workplace, I'm starting to sound like Steve. What did you do to me, Steve? Period. It's horrible.
Oh, Jeffrey, our beloved boss, Jeffrey Emmett says, it's horrible. Period. Marie said hi. She must have heard us talking about her last week.
Marie Romero?
Yeah, we were talking. Marie came up in conversation last week on the live show, so it's very funny. Hi, Marie, we miss you.
Marie. It's
But
Tuesday.
it's, yeah.
We should have called her.
I know, we should have called Marie for a check-in from Florida, but she would have a lot to say, I could imagine,
I
on
bet.
work ethic.
Restaurant work.
She's a restaurant girl. I've
Yeah, but
gladly
I mean, just
put that in my
the
past.
Just the ordering from Cheesecake Factory, you know, restaurant work has changed.
Yeah.
I know that when I worked in a restaurant that I would never just keep shuffling the phone. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like you said, let's fix that.
You get it fixed.
Get your order. Let's help you out. Let's fix this because we want your business to come back.
You value customer experience. Yeah.
Cheesecake Factory doesn't seem to care, right?
No, you know what's crazy is like I feel like it used to be like a pretty widespread saying, and you know if you haven't heard it, then I'd be surprised. But it's like people should have to work in the service industry.
Oh
right?
yeah,
You should have to do some sort of customer service because you have no idea what it's like to be spoken down to so harshly by somebody and still have to serve them with a smile and and with all of your effort. You know, when you're handling their food as a line cook and you're like, oh, this is the so and so that said that, and like, you know, and you know what I mean? Like, it's so easy to do something like that, but like you find the restraint and you swallow your pride and you do the job because it's part of life. It's just part of life. And I think a little bit of that is lost on this generation.
And definitely with the whole concept of I'll take my business elsewhere, and people are fine to say, okay, go. Right. In this day and age.
Well, like Cheesecake Factory, it's a corporation.
Yeah, right. But I just remember that would be a nightmare if someone would say, well, I'll never come back here again. It's like, oh no, I'll placate you in any way possible, whether the customer's right or wrong. And
I work
I'm sorry, as someone who has worked in the industry, I worked in hospitality for 12 years. I worked in customer service. The customer's wrong sometimes. It happens.
Most of the time.
It happens. Most of the time. But we walking that line of the customer is always right is always a really hard one to you got to just really grit those teeth and go, okay, I'll try to do this. But
I worked in a mom and pop restaurant. The owner was never more than 15 feet away from me.
Right,
It's like there's no way to tell a customer you don't like it, go to IHOP, you know.
Right. Yeah, and you don't even get too many places like that anymore. Most places are owned by, or some sort of chain or a larger corporation. So, the one customer walking out the door doesn't affect anybody anymore. Whereas
and the person that might be bothered by it is in a whole different state.
But yeah, right.
All right, we're gonna move on a little bit, just a little bit, because
it's. I just want to address Doxy's point about
go for it.
Not admitting you work there.
Yeah.
I've had several employers who won't say anything about my work ethic. They'll only say I work there from this date till this date, and that's all they will acknowledge. So I've seen that too, where the employer will not say anything about me other than she worked here from this date to this date.
Why do you think that is?
I think they got sued for bad references.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I think that's why we don't get
character assassination.
Because
negative feedback is character assassination.
Right, yeah.
Like, Jesus.
You're victimizing me.
Like, so sensitive. Jesus. Like, if you're an asshole, you're an asshole. You know
right.
what I mean? Like, I'd rather be told officially that I'm an asshole than people talk behind my back on the street. You know what I mean? Because it's gonna catch up to you at some point.
It will catch
up. It will catch up to you. You know, and it's like, I'm sorry. Next.
That's all right. So to move the conversation slightly further forward, millennials generally place a high value on meaningful motivation for their work. We've discussed that. Creative work motivates them, as does knowing that their work has a positive impact on others, which I've said. This is something, the next part is where I go, money may be less of a motivator for millennials than for previous generations, although a passion for their work can and does help them advance in their careers. Now, I am a very, very lucky individual. Except for one thing, except for one of my jobs. I love everything I do. It is everything, it's passion, like passion project after passion project. And I have one job that I do to help prop up the bank balance. That being said, the one thing that would make my life easier and better is money. I think that we are in a very, especially with the economies everywhere, the way that they are.
Right.
I don't think that the money can't buy happiness slogan that has been placed on things for self-worth and all that is as strictly as true as it ever used to be. And yes, your definition of happiness might not be material things and etc., but knowing that you don't have to worry about your bank balance and do I have enough money for this bill to come out as well as this, and if there's an emergency, can I just relax and go, it's okay? Financial stability, I think, is a separate thing to money being a motivator.
Correct.
For me,
I totally agree.
as a millennial.
So totally agree. I don't think money has ever motivated me to do a job more or less. I mean, whatever I got paid is what I accepted to get paid for at that job. However, societal necessities means that I have to now dictate what I make, because if I'm dedicating X amount of hours to the job, it has to fulfill a certain amount of dollar value back at home, like you said, with bills. And it's not that I wouldn't do the job for free. A lot of jobs I would do strictly for passion, but it's just not feasible anymore. You know, I mean, you're talking about the minimum wage when I started working at 16 years old in what would that have been, 1998? You know, I think it was like $4.25 or $4.50. You know, I mean,
I'd
there were
already been
plenty.
out of college 10 years then.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of jobs that, you know, we're like, we'll pay you $5 an hour because it's a round number, you know, and I'm like, oh, right. You know what I mean? But right. Okay. So at that point, I was not fiscally responsible for anybody else or anything of my own. But once those responsibilities start adding up, you know, I think money absolutely becomes a motivator. And also you have to take into account too, like, I think we're in a different world now where people do tend to work more in more passion-friendly areas. You know what I mean? Like there's less of a drive on college and career than I feel like there ever was, right? Like,
and I think that's a good thing.
No, I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. You know, I mean, that's to each his own. I'm just saying, like, growing up, it was like, hey, you're taking tests in homeroom, you know, in high school, because it's like, these are the 4 jobs we think you'll be best at. These are the universities that apply to those jobs. This is where you should apply to college to get a career in this and then move forward. And then once it started coming out that like 88% of college graduates were in fields other than what they studied in college, people were like, well, this is bullshit. Like, you know, I don't need to do this anymore. And then you started, like you said, a lot of, you know, as things got technology based, you hired younger people who were quote unquote less qualified with less experience, but because they could operate computer software versus somebody who was a little bit older and wasn't as efficient or proficient at it, you know, those people fell by the wayside. And now it's like, well, I'm doing odds and end jobs to try to make, you know, ends meet. Mm-hmm. So I think that that onus on the career, you know, that was like 20 years pension, retirement.
Right. Oh, well, that's gone. They went with the boomers. The boomers were the last real generation to see that 20 years and a gold watch and a retirement plan.
I mean, just to throw a personal experience out there. Yesterday, I got what they call the canvassing letter for the court system. I took the test back in October for the New York State court system, and I scored a 90 on the test. And yesterday, I got my letter from NASA. Thank you. I got my letter from NASA. That's no studying and having no idea what the test was, by the way. And I was just like, and blind. I was totally blind. I was literally like this on my computer screen, trying to read the thing. But anyway, I got my first invitation for a job interview yesterday. So I had to fill out the paperwork. I had to send out my resume and update my resume and send it out. And it's just one of those things where, like my point in bringing it up, the first thing that popped in my head was, what's 20 years from now? And I'm like, okay, 60, 62. I could work till I'm 65 and get a full pension from the state on this job. You know what I mean? Like, that was the first thing that popped in my head. I wish that was the person that popped in my head at 22 years old, you know, because I'd be 10 years from retirement now, you know, and well on my way. But that's the shit that they don't teach you when you should learn it in high school. You know what I mean? It comes with experience and shooting yourself.
That's also the problem now, that retirement isn't guaranteed for anyone.
No.
You can retire, but can you afford to live? Is the ultimate question. Like, our generation has to deal with the fact that we're probably going to be working a lot later than generations before us, just for the sheer fact of trying to survive in an economy that is constantly like swelling and swelling. House prices, home loans, interest rates, they're all rising. So even these people that have done the, you know, grown up thing and bought the house and all that kind of thing might end up with nothing at the end of all of it.
Right.
And what a kick in the teeth that is from the lessons that we got taught, that if you work hard and you save money and you do this and you do that and you do it, you'll have a great life. There's no guarantee of that now.
We're talking about that boomer prosperity that we were talking about at the start of the show. There were boomers that worked the same job for 25 years and retired at 55 with pensions and then started whole new careers. You know, it's like, I'm going to have to work till noon the day of my funeral.
You'll have to do it overtime. Dead woman working.
And someone will still rock the casket and be like, Vera, you forgot to punch out. I'm going to have to dock you.
Yeah, right.
Vera, you forgot to sign this form, which means we have to tax you.
Could you work an extra 2 hours? Sarah's hurt her thumbnail and has to run to the manicurist.
Yes. Just prop her up at the desk weekend at Bernie's style. No one will notice. It's okay.
Yeah, there's no accountability. You just have to be able to hit the accept
make sure
on the
you don't
ringer.
have to do any injections or any procedures.
That's amazing. I can just imagine Vera getting wheeled around and
little weekend at Bernie's. Bernie.
All right, let's talk about. We did touch on it briefly, but let's talk about work-life balance, because this conversation has come up previously, and as Tim said, it seems like this is a conversation that's generating in society lately about kids that grew up in the 90s, no matter who you are,
or the 80s,
or the 80s or before that. I don't know that there's that many latchkey kids anymore. You know, the come home, survive on your own until your parents arrive, and have those adventures and have those learning moments and have all that kind of thing. And I think I feel like that kind of is like an ignorance is bliss type of thing, right? Like, when we were growing up in the 80s or 90s, all the same dangers, societal dangers existed. Like, none of this is new, you know what I mean? But it just wasn't in our face all the time. So, like, our parents were kind of oblivious to it. So it was like, he'll be fine walking home from school in the middle, I'm sure walk to the park in the dark with your friends, because you didn't know the guy 2 doors down was a pedophile or a rapist or a murderer or, whatever. But now it's like every 2 minutes, it's like, cling. Oh, the person who just moved into the corner is a registered sex offender. Oh, some kid got abducted over here. Oh, this kid. Now I can see the girls' bus stop from our front door. I can see it. Melissa will not let the girls walk home. Like, they're 10 and 11. I was walking home from down a hill and around a corner at 5 and 6 years old with my sister, and like opening the door, letting ourselves in, making a snack, making sure things were prepared for my mother to make dinner when she got in. Like, certain things out on the counter. These girls come in and were like, I'm hungry. I'm like, you know where we keep the snacks and shit? Like, go walk your ass in there and fucking put some buns on a microwave. I mean, there are no such thing as latch. Plus, all the people working from home now, so it's not like I'll be at work until 5 o'clock. So let yourself in. When
I was a kid, we traveled in a pack. You talk about being close to your cousins. My cousins
Yes,
lived
yeah.
around the corner. There were
Right.
6 of us, close in age. We'd get on our bikes in the morning, ride our bikes up to the lake, and if our parents didn't see us till dinner time, they were totally happy. You
Right.
know?
Yeah,
And if
100%.
we lost one of the 6 on the way home, God help us. You
Right.
know?
Yeah, right.
But I was 13 years old and Dia was 12, and we went with 2 other friends to the New York State Fair. We got on the bus by ourselves. The bus took us over to Syracuse. We walked around the fair alone, just 4 13-year-olds, you know, and got back on the bus and came home. I was scared to let my nephew go to the bathroom by himself when he was 11. You know, it's just a change.
Yeah.
And as Tim said, it's probably we grew up. I remember Stranger Danger. I remember Stranger Danger being like the biggest thing that could happen. Stranger Danger, white vans everywhere threatening to take children away to do horrible things to them. Do you think this is all recessed in our memory to go, oh my God, I have a child. No, if there's a white van around, they're coming to take my precious child away. It's just like, Dogsy, wait, Dogsy's just come up. One phrase that is burned into my memory from when I was a kid: "Be home before the street lights come on." That
100%.
was the end. As soon as those lights come in, I gotta go.
You could, in my neighborhood, you could hear them humming before they clicked.
Right.
So it was like, if you were down the road and that pole started humming, you're like, oh shit, I gotta go. You know, it was like you were on second base. It was like, I'm out.
Yep.
But do you think that that's because we allowed children their own agency? Or our parents allowed their children their own agency? The notion of helicopter parenting is one that is, you know, very prevalent and has its highs and lows and its effects. But we were allowed to make mistakes on our own and deal with that, as opposed to, oh my God, you push Sarah over. Well, Sarah's parents are upset with you, and I'm upset with Sarah's parents because you pushed her over. You couldn't have done that because you're a perfect child. My child would never have pushed Sarah over. How dare you? Like, you deal with it.
That's
like,
a parenting problem.
I know, but is it a response to the childhoods that we went through?
Yeah, but I'm going to call bullshit on that because like I said, I took a bus to the state fair when I was 13. But when I got out of college and had to work on my own, I was terrified to make the phone call to make an appointment with my doctor. You know, it's not something that I was taught how to do. It's not something I knew how to do. So I just it'll go away in a little while. I don't need to go to the doctor. Meanwhile, I've got my arm tucked up.
Trapped nerves.
You know, I mean, I think it's, you know, I think my niece and nephew who had helicopter parents, you know, it's like Matthias, like I said, was 11 before I let him go to the bathroom by himself. You know, poor kid's 10 years old being dragged into the ladies' room. You know, but he's got so much more agency than I had at his age. You know, he'll make his decisions. You know,
I don't know if I would agree with the helicopter parent, you know, being a response to our childhood. I think that I don't know. I tend to think that it's more just kind of like societal norms now, because I wouldn't say that like Melissa or myself would be like helicopter parents by any means. I mean, I'm full go on she's not going to learn unless she screws up or hurts herself, you know, because that's how I learned. I was just like, oh shit, that hurt. I'm never doing that again, you know. And it's like, and even that when they have been doing something that my mother hit me for, you know, being like, that is not a response I want to invoke anymore, so I will not do it anymore. And also, I think that, like Vera said, like our block, we had a pack of kids, right? Like there were 2 houses down, there were 2 kids. Across the street, there were 3 more kids. 2 more doors down, there were these more kids. We live on the street, and I know there's kids a couple of doors down, but nobody interacts. Kids are not outside playing anymore. So it's like everybody's so in their own world that there's no more neighbors. Like you don't know your neighbors like I knew my neighbors growing up. You know, like maybe your immediate neighbors, like next door, but you could walk down the block like, "Hey, Mr. So-and-so," or "Hi, Mrs. So-and-so," or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, my grandmother knows her from church," or "This one works with my dad."
They weren't afraid to go, "I know your parents, get home," and you're like, "Oh shit!"
Right.
They knew my first, middle, and last names, and they used them often, you know, and it was. And then it was like, I saw Miss So-and-so at church today, what happened there? Or, and it was like, oh shit, yeah, we did this, and, we tied Billy to a post, or, whatever. But it's like,
or
Billy.
Mr. Thomas caught you guys smoking behind his barn.
yeah. But there's none, because kids aren't outside anymore. You know what I mean? These girls do not go outside. They don't ride bikes. They don't play catch. They don't play ball. And I feel like one kind of feeds the other. I think that parents are afraid to let their kids do that. And in turn, now it's like, well, now they don't go out. You know what I'm saying? Like one kind of trope feeds the other, right? Like there's dangerous people outside, so don't go outside. Well, there's dangerous people outside because not everybody's outside. And, people just aren't aware like they used to be of their neighbors.
But there's also the converse of that is that these kids aren't getting that kind of exercise. They aren't getting that kind of interaction. They're not experiencing that kind of autonomy. And now they're more anxious than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dogsy. Also remember my dad. Like this, yeah. I also remember my dad saying to my mother, if somebody snatches him, they must be scraping the barrel. Oh, poor Dogsy. So that conversation leads directly to where I wanted it to, because one of the millennials' biggest claims to fame is that we are technologically adept and can see the value and of technology and are adaptive to it. So we are the generation that grew up with the internet. The internet was the thing. We know how to work it. We can do it. It was great. We've seen the benefits of the internet. We know how to work technology, and we have kind of passed that on to the next generation in a really piss poor way when you look at it. Because as you said, kids these days are stuck to the technology, where we wouldn't have had that option. Like,
adults are stuck to that technology.
I know, but this is the thing. We've accepted it as part of our life. We go, oh my god, this is great. For teenage boys everywhere, when you got that internet connection at home, you're like, yes, I know where I'm going to wait very carefully as this downloads pixel by pixel, so I can see a blurry 100%. Body part,
Anyway, like, it wasn't even nudes. It was like a picture from a calendar some kid found out. It was like a swimsuit, and it was like, it's going to take 45 minutes to download, and I've got to be online so no one can use the phone. And if someone picked up the phone and interrupted the download, you're like, what are you, an asshole? Now I've only got from like her neck up, and I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and then
I got to wait all over again.
And when you plugged in, it went.
Get up at 2 a.m. in the morning to the family computer that's in like the lounge room. You're like, oh, I'm gonna watch over my shoulder. Crack at it. Dirty little perverts that they are. But we've grown up with that. We know how to drive technology, and that it entertained us and it gave us good things. The beast has kind of bitten us back with the addictiveness of what it is, because as you said, kids today, they don't go outside, they don't know their neighbors, because they don't need to, because they have things like this where they have access to the whole world.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Vera.
I bought this house because it had 2 porches. It has a shaded covered back porch, and it has an open colonnaded side porch. I haven't been on my porch in 15 or 20 years. And I bought the house 22 years ago. I don't go outside. Right. We were in New York. We were sitting in the train lounge waiting to come home. Every single person from age 14 to 70 was on their phone.
Yeah. Yep.
Nobody was talking to anybody. We were all on our phones.
Yeah. My sister, she was in town a couple, maybe it's like 2 months ago now, for one of my cousin's bridal showers. So Melissa, myself, my sister, and the girls went to dinner before she got back on her plane. And the girls took the time to be like, hey, Christina, you'll never guess what happened. And then blah, 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 explained a fight that she got in with her friend. The other one did the same thing. And my sister goes, interesting. She goes, do you know what the common thing was between both of your stories? And she goes, what? She goes, you were texting your friends. And that happened. She goes, when we were growing up, she goes, you came home. If you had a fight with a friend in school, or if something happened with somebody in school, You came home, you got off the bus, you went inside, you did your homework, and you were with your family the rest of the night. And that is it. You talked about your days. You may have discussed a fight with a parent, and she may have coached you through it. That doesn't exist for you guys anymore. You guys now have a fight in school. You text the whole time on the bus. You get home, you text with that person all night, and this anxiety and this fighting, you get no break from it. You get no break from each other. If you're friends with someone in school and you spend all your free time with friends in school, you're at home spending all your free times on the phone with friends now. She's like, it's insane how small the internet for us opened the world, right? Like we got to see things we never thought we'd see. Now it's done the exact opposite. It shrunk the world. It puts everything right at your face. And they don't even have the patience to watch a 3-minute video anymore. Now everything's 30 seconds. And I catch myself doing it. I'm like, oh, too much editorializing, skip. I want to hear what you had to say, but you took too long to explain it. Next. And it's like I can't watch commercials anymore because everything's streaming on Hulu or Netflix doesn't have commercials. I get so impatient with live television now. I'm like, this is an end. If there is a commercial, pick up my phone during a commercial, scroll through my phone during commercial, put it down. and it's like, and I catch myself doing it all the time. I try to rationalize it by, okay, well, I'm outside working for a couple of hours a day doing whatever. But I'm just as guilty of it as the kids, and it sucks.
We all are.
I hate it.
Yeah.
But this is why I want to have this conversation, because we have to realize every generation romanticizes, themselves and go, remember, well, the fact that we have a generation called the greatest generation is enough in itself. And yes, amazing strides to move a world forward from a very difficult time. But every generation has this romanticized notion of what they've left the planet, or what their gift will be to the world moving forward. And I think, especially now that, Tim, majority of the panel of the regular UCR people are at this midlife moment. It's interesting to go, okay, this is where we're going.
As midlife.
Well, the funny thing now is, Vera, and you probably are, with the way that things are moving forward. Everyone's telling us we're going to live till 120. It's like, really?
Yeah, I've seen Futurama. You just a head to tank at some point. Just a head to tank.
I don't know. There's got to be a time when you tap out.
This topic, and before we end the show, I want to point out, though, without technology, we would not know each other.
Exactly, and that's I was gonna round that out.
And we
as much as it's as it does make your world smaller, it does make the world smaller, because 4 years ago I happened to get smashed into this little equation, and I talk to you guys a lot more than I talk to my family. It's strange, and we have these conversations. We have these bigger conversations that some people won't have. Like I am a person that if I want to hang out with my friends, sometimes I don't want to talk about surface shit. I like to have like big conversations and stuff and really get to know people. And I know some of you guys better than I know my own family, because we have these conversations, not just on air, off air as well, and in messages and all that kind of stuff. And we give each other our experiences and our knowledge, and we have disagreements and we have agreements and we have all that stuff, but it allows me a bigger, better world experience, because I know so many people that I would never have met had it not been for the internet. And it has its drawbacks, but it definitely has its life affirming moments.
Well, I also want to pat us on the back too, because in this divisive world, you have the right and you have the left, but here in our uncensored world, we can talk to each other. We can still respect each other. We don't have to agree on everything, but we still have so many other things in common.
Right.
And everyone loves when it gets heated.
Yeah, especially Jeffrey.
Well, it's like one of those things. Well, it's because if someone was having a conversation about anything, but I know that when you talk about the politics and that being heated and stuff, it's like if it wasn't heated, then I almost wouldn't believe what you were saying, because it's like you have no conviction in what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like, I
Right.
feel like that's such an important part of it. Like, it's okay to be heated. You can still be respectful. You know what I mean? As long as it
I
doesn't
think
get personal. Like, I can say, okay, you know what? You've laid out X, Y, and Z. That's fine. I believe in A, B, and C. And that's my belief, and that's your belief, or that's your opinion, and that's my opinion. We can throw facts back and forth with each other. But it's like, it's the uneducated or the ignorant that then follow that up with, oh, well, you're a piece of shit, you know, or you're this, or you're that. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like, I thought we were having a conversation. And that's honestly, there's been times when like Veer has said stuff on the show where like we've gone back and forth, and I was like, oh shit, I sound like an idiot because I didn't know that. And then like I'll go and like try to find like what she said, and I'll look up like, okay, I'll be like, okay, all right, no, totally understand. You know, like I get it, I see that, and that has carried over into my day to day, where it's actually a kind of a silly. It's a Mark Twain quote, but it was brought up in Ted Lasso in the first season.
Right.
And he said, be curious. And he was upset with his bullies because he's like, they weren't curious. They never asked me any questions. They just passed judgment. You know, so I think all the time now I'm like, be curious. Like, don't be afraid to ask somebody questions. Even if you think that question might offend them. And I don't mean to ask it offensively, but, you know, some people are touchy-feely about certain things. So it's like, but I don't know unless I ask. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where you stand unless I ask. So
I really love the fact that we can have different opinions and still respect each other.
Yeah, 100%.
That's one of the beauties of this
And
technology that's brought us.
As
to
Kim
this
just
place.
said, the minute that somebody has to resort to personal attacks is the minute that your argument becomes null and void, because you can't back it up. You can't back up. And we have removed people from the show, from the panel, because of that. Because yes, you can believe you have in the free world, and however you're raised, you have every valid point to express yourself in an intelligent way. But as soon as you have to go, blah, 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 you're fat. You're like, oh, okay. Right. So you've gone
Thanks
from
for the update, Mickey.
Believe you're an ugly bitch. You know, like, as soon as it happens, it's like, really? It's like a scuttlebutt that you set yourself. It's like, okay, well, then I don't need to say anything further because you're an idiot. Yeah. Oh, look, we should close out. We should close this out with Dogsy because he has brought up two amazing points about, you know, bringing things back. Tech has done odd things to the world. My mother lives an hour away. She would come to... Oh, wait, no. That's not the one I wanted first. The only person I know who lives on my street is the woman who lives at the end of the street, and her name is Dawn. She comes over to knit on Sundays, and she brings me cakes. Also, she keeps on picking up new men at bingo every week. Hell of a woman.
Good for her.
Yeah, good on you, Dawn. And this is the other one I wanted to... It really does capture the whole vibe of the show. Things haven't been the same since the day they shot Harambe.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Dude, things are more civilized before then.
Fucking kids and animals, man. These fucking kids and animals.
We saw it.
Animals killed all over the world.
We saw it, and the world saw it happen, and things haven't been the same. So some will say Harambe, some will say the cinema release of the movie Cats, like brought on the. But look, we don't know. It could. They were kind of not that far apart. But as the world degrades, we will still be here to comment on it. We only really got through half of the conversation that I wanted to have, so it's really we got a lot to say as per usual. But it's definitely been really, really interesting. I hope that people have enjoyed having a little vent with us, and thank you for joining us, Tim, and thank you for joining us, Vera. As always, we will be back on Thursday/Friday, depending where you are in the world, for Uncensored Radio Live. And there's some corking, cracking conversation this week. There may even be the return of What the Fuck Weekly.
Oh, did it go away?
Be prepared to be shocked, disgusted, saddened. Who knows?
No.
Whatever I may find.
Worse than the woman who pooped through the restaurant.
I don't know. What about Lobster Lady? You never know. We have Lobster Lady is still up there. Yep. Thank you, Dogsy. I will be on. I will talk to you soon. Thank you, Celtic Dragon Paranormal Investigation, for joining us today. Thank you, Dogsy. Thank you, everyone else that is clocked in today as well. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you again soon. We will. There's some more roundtables coming because Tim feels fired up about life. So
Yeah.
we need to get him angry. All right, guys. Yeah,
Men's
keep
Health
your
Month.
keep
Two
your
of them, but I'm just saying,
millennial.
like, I'm having a hard time this month, so just keep,
We'll have that.
don't
Maybe
forget some guys who are having mental
maybe the
things.
fellas get together and have a bit of a roundtable ourselves.
Ooh,
That might be an idea.
just the boys.
Just the
A
boys.
little
Boys
sausage club.
Sausage fest. All right, we'll see you soon, guys. No matter what generation you are, just be a good person. We don't have to call you an asshole. Bye. I was gonna scream justice for Harambe, but do you know where I think the beginning of this whole thing was?
What?
I'm gonna say a sentence, and I'm gonna see your reaction. It all started with 2 girls, 1 cup.
One